Welcome to Eye on America. I'm Michelle Miller. Today we meet those breaking barriers to help create better lives across our nation. A retired U.S. soccer star sheds light on the potential threat of brain injuries from playing the beautiful game. And we meet rescue workers helping heal marine life. But first, we begin with a recruitment crisis facing the U.S. Army. Only 23% of Americans aged 17 to 24 are eligible to join without a waiver. But David Martin shows us how the Army is increasing the number of those willing and able to serve.
Fresh out of college and looking for a steady paycheck, Kevin and Jocelyn Sellis went to the Go Army website.
The Army pays well. The Army can really provide a future for us and for our children who don't even exist yet.
But there was one very big problem. He weighed 305 pounds and she weighed 190. Obesity is one reason more than 3/4 of young men and women do not meet the basic eligibility requirements for enlisting in the armed forces. Another is a shocking decline in test scores for reading and math.
Only about 1/3 are passing the academic tests to come to the Army, where it used to be about 2/3.
Army Chief of Staff General James McConville expects the Army will be about 10,000 recruits short this year. Have you missed by that much before?
Well, we haven't missed by that number in recent history.
McConville says the Army is setting up prep camps to get potential recruits in good enough physical and mental shape to enlist. Kevin and Jocelyn Sellis did it on their own, working out with their recruiter, Staff Sergeant Jimmy Vanderhall.
I lost almost 70 pounds, and then Jocelyn's lost quite a bit of weight as well.
Oh, yeah, so I went from 190 to 160.
So about 100 pounds between you.
Yeah, we lost a whole person.
They are finally scheduled to report to basic training in 2 weeks, but it took them over a year of heavy lifting to qualify.
Man's best friend, when trained, can also be pretty darn good security. A surge of retail thefts has Chicago businesses turning to canines for protection. Here's Charlie DeMar.
In the battle against thieves this bold, dogs like Boss are turning into a not-so-secret weapon.
This particular backpack is going to have a handgun in it.
Check. Boss and his partner work for Chicago's Action Canine.
It's like you found it.
Yep, exactly.
The 7-year-old Labrador has over 1,500 hours of training, sniffing out guns and explosives. He started training as a puppy. He's one of about 80 dogs at Action Canine.
No man or machine could replicate what a dog could bring to the table.
Dogs like these once worked almost exclusively for law enforcement, but they're now in high demand for retail stores and businesses. In the last year, 69% of retailers have reported an increase in organized retail crime. At the Neiman Marcus on Chicago's Magnificent Mile, a security dog recently sniffed out a man with a gun there. It turned out he also had $1,000 in stolen goods.
In many cases, the criminal or somebody who wants to steal from a store doesn't know the capabilities of that dog.
That's the important part of it. They have no clue, so you keep them at bay.
Former Chicago Police Deputy Chief Jim Keating now works for Action Canine and says the demand for the dogs is spiking.
I know our company has, within the last 6 months or so, got numerous calls inquiring about our services, to see our capabilities. And quite frankly, I think that it's about ready to take off.
And at Chicago's Navy Pier, dogs are a big part of their plans to protect the stores and the 9 million people who visit every year.
The security dogs add that level of comfort, and it's like a family familiarity as well that's provided. And I think people just generally feel safe knowing that in addition to our security team members, that there is a canine patrol as well.
More retailers are sold on gun-sniffing dogs to keep customers safe and products on the shelves.
After the break, we'll meet a former top U.S. soccer player giving a heads up about potential risks of the game. We don't often consider soccer a particularly violent sport, yet many mild but repetitive hits to the head can be a risk for the brain injury known as CTE. A study found 22% of all soccer injuries are concussions, a possible link to brain trauma. Dr. John LaPook talks with retired U.S. soccer star Bruce Murray about how to protect young athletes and pro players from the risk.
Swinging over the cross, and a superb volley!
In 1990,
Bruce Murray, the scorer.
Bruce Murray was at the top of his game.
Murray with a header, yes!
Murray was a star at Clemson.
It was time for the Bruce Murray Show again.
Before playing forward for Team USA.
It's the greatest feeling to be able to travel the world and do what we did.
Murray, nice run by Bruce. But
as he moved into professional soccer, Murray continued his reputation for being fearless. His aggressive play sometimes left him seeing stars.
How did those concussions generally happen?
I was playing for the U.S. in Saudi Arabia, and one of the Saudi players came right through, and his knee caught me in the head. I was on my hands and knees trying to find where my equilibrium was. But for the next 6 weeks to a month, I would go places and not know why I was there.
Back then, they would just say, "You got your bell rung."
Yeah.
Right? You heard that expression?
Oh, yeah. Get back out there, be tough.
Murray stayed tough through multiple concussions and collisions. He retired in 1995 at age 29.
What made you finally hang up your sneakers?
I was suffering from post-concussion, lack of sleep, and I have a hard time with light headaches. My body just felt like beaten up. Where do you want to go for 4 years, right?
When we visited Murray and his family in Maryland 2 years ago, he was troubled by recent lapses in memory.
So how's your airplane coming there, buddy?
Including one that left him especially shaken.
My wife and my son and I were at the store, and I was in the car, and they came out, and they came to the car, and I said, "Oh, sorry, ma'am, do you need to get by?" And then she kind of like looked at me like, are you okay? And then I was like, oh, wait a second, it's you.
That you was the woman he had married 8 years earlier, Lynn Murray.
When Bruce looked at you and didn't recognize you, what was that like for you?
It was shocking. It told me a lot. You know, I'm realizing now that we don't have the future that we were hoping for. So.
It's the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Good job, Callie.
Because of Bruce's history of concussions, the Murrays reached out to Boston University's Center for Chronic Traumatic Encephalopathy, or CTE.
The issue is the repetitive hits that the players take.
Dr. Ann McKee is the center's director and believes concussions are not the only cause of CTE.
I think there's been such an emphasis on concussion in these contact sports. It's the hits that are asymptomatic that the player plays right through, and over time, those injuries accumulate and lead to a high risk for CTE.
Murray recalls heading the ball up to 20 times a day during practice drills.
But the balls were coming in at full pace, and you're just trying to get a piece of it and get it in the net.
With your head?
Oh, yeah. And there many times you would stagger back to the line, and your teammate would be like, "Man, that looked terrible. You okay?" You're like, "Nah, yeah, I'm fine."
Back then, nobody was saying, "Hey, maybe this is a problem."
Nobody said that, yeah.
Since CTE can only be diagnosed after death, the BU researchers scanned Murray's head for clues, and they found one. His brain tissue, seen here in gray, had atrophied or shrunk. Compare that with this normal scan, where the gray brain tissue fills much of the skull.
Do you think that heading should be allowed in soccer?
There's an argument for taking heading out of soccer. Those balls are coming from a great distance at a tremendous velocity, and that impacts the head and leads to these injuries later on.
U.S. Soccer, which governs the sport from kindergarten through the elite level, has extensive concussion protocols, and it bans or limits headers in children 13 and younger. But when it comes to subconcussive hits in older players, U.S. Soccer told CBS News it is awaiting more research. The organization declined our request for an on-camera interview.
Think about some of the military cases.
Dr. McKee has examined the brains of hundreds of deceased veterans and athletes, including football player Aaron Hernandez, who died by suicide while serving a life sentence for murder. She thinks more needs to be done to protect athletes of all ages.
Is the damage that you see in football similar to the damage you've been seeing with soccer?
Yeah, the changes look identical whether they played rugby, ice hockey, football, or soccer. It's the same repetitive hits to the head.
We meet again. When we checked with Bruce and Lynn Murray recently, They told us his condition appears to be stable, but he still struggles with memory, focus, and balance.
Good, go with pace, with pace. Excellent, excellent. Good work, good work.
He still enjoys coaching youth soccer.
Good, come find me. Come on, come find me. There you go.
But believes the sport he loves may need changes to make it safer for everyone.
I think U.S. soccer needs to address this. It's called football all around the world.
Good.
What if you rewrite the rules? Do you have to head the ball?
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Spotting a seal or sea turtle can be a pleasant surprise when out on the water, but if you think that they're injured, experts say let the pros handle it. Michael George goes inside a New York rescue center to learn about marine life rehab firsthand.
During a recent trip to a wildlife rehab center on New York's Long Island, we met Willow, a 7-month-old gray seal pup.
She's adorable. I see her looking right at us, and she's got these puppy dog eyes.
Yeah, seals are really like dogs. We call these guys kind of like the German Shepherd. They have that longer snout.
But Willow hasn't had an easy life. She was struck by a boat, leaving her with a fractured shoulder and deep cuts on her back.
We don't want anything to happen to these guys.
Maxine Montello and her team at the New York Marine Rescue Center have spent weeks rehabilitating Willow, along with Cedar, a male seal who was found with a badly infected flipper.
These guys can be a handful.
Very much so. Yes.
Volunteers Lenore McGinn and Lorraine Michagno are helping nurse Willow and Cedar back to health.
Cedar is a chunky monkey. He's cute. He comes up, he looks at you, he wants more food constantly. Willow's kind of quiet. The seals all definitely have their own personalities.
Unfortunately, more animals are ending up at the rescue center, and too often we're to blame. Boats, abandoned fishing gear, and pollution are leading to injuries for seals and sea turtles. One of the biggest threats, the garbage we leave when we go to the beach.
We see the entanglements, with the plastic bags and the plastic in the waters.
They wind up in the ocean, and then the animals unfortunately suffer because they eat them thinking they're food.
Another growing problem, harassment.
People want to get close. They want to get that selfie. They want to touch that animal. If you do see them, enjoy from afar.
And even well-intentioned people who think they're helping can make things worse. After Willow was injured, a Good Samaritan picked her up and put her in his truck to drive her to a vet.
He wasn't trying to hurt this animal, but picking these animals up is illegal. They're federally protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act.
It's easy to forget Willow and Cedar are still wild animals. If you're at the beach and you see a beached or injured animal, marine wildlife experts suggest calling the nearest rescue center.
I will let you know when I'm like 10 minutes away.
As we were shooting our interview, a bystander did just that, calling to report a badly injured sea turtle.
Feel a little better.
Thanks to that call, the team was able to save it.
This is a Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, so they're one of the most critically endangered sea turtles, so we really appreciate you guys calling.
Willow and Cedar are healing nicely, and they've both put on 30 pounds. Now, Maxine says, it's time for them to go home.
You ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
The pair had their final checkup. They got weighed,
38.2.
swabbed to check for diseases, and had their blood drawn.
Going in.
After starting the summer in a rehab facility, it was time to return to the wild. Cedar went first and seemed all too grateful to be back in the water. But Willow was nervous. For a moment, it seemed like she wouldn't go. But eventually...
That moment when they went back into the water, is that what this is all about for you?
Yeah, this is the best part of the job. All our hard work paid off. It's our goal to put them back into the wild to return them home.
Coming up, the story of a gardener with a green thumb and a big heart. This is Eye on America. This next story is a breath of fresh air about a gardening program in North Carolina helping teenagers get on the path to success. Mark Strassman has the story.
It's all about attitude.
Even in 97-degree heat, hope flourishes in this quarter-acre organic garden.
When you take it home, share it with your family.
Reggie Singleton, a 60-year-old master gardener, founded the Mail's Place in 2009. He teaches a couple dozen, mostly teenagers, life lessons about getting in the dirt and working up a sweat.
We're not a soft program.
What kind of
values can you learn?
Sowing and reaping, sowing and reaping, sowing and reaping.
Gardening involves nutrients and fertilizer, patience and commitment.
It's not always sunshine and rainbows. Plants definitely take time to grow. It doesn't happen overnight.
Fruits and vegetables they reap, they sell at this farmer's market and replant profits in the program.
You should expect a bounty harvest, especially when you cultivate it and take care of it on a regular basis.
What are you really growing here?
We're growing men.
The real bumper crop is the boys themselves.
Absolutely.
These sweet potatoes, why not?
To bear fruit, that weed is not going to hoe itself.
These are the okra plants right here.
To close out our show, we meet the first woman and youngest person ever to oversee the New Yorker cartoon. Tony DeCopel sat down with Emma Allen to share what's changed in the 5 years she's been in the role and why laughter isn't always part of the job.
Ready to go?
Yeah. In a corner conference room at the World Trade Center, we recently witnessed one of the most high-stakes weekly conversations in journalism.
Let's just review. There's a sausage.
Sausage riding a horse. Between some of the very best minds in the business.
Who's talking?
The lobster. A debate over a simple question. Is this funny?
Goo goo gaga.
Editor David Remnick has final say over what officially becomes a New Yorker cartoon.
I like this.
I love this. But it's Emma Allen who gets to decide what to put before him.
It's a strange art form that exists almost only at the New Yorker at this point.
Allen's been in the role since 2017 when she replaced longtime cartoon editor Bob Mankoff.
Did he give you any advice about the new job?
I mean, I think he said, you know, you can do it. You pick what's funny and you get rid of what's not funny. And fundamentally, that is all there is to it.
She was already doing that with words, editing humor articles on the magazine's website when Remnick suggested she try pictures, too.
You were 29?
Yeah.
No one had ever been younger in the job.
No one has ever been younger than I was at
In
29.
that job. You were the youngest 29 ever?
Yeah.
But she's also more experienced than you might expect. A humor columnist in college, and before that, a little kid who collected New Yorker cartoons.
Why would a kid be cutting out New Yorker cartoons?
I guess for all the ones I understood, I thought they were hilarious. And for all the ones I didn't understand, I sort of wanted to unpack them or grow up enough to be able to understand them.
The New Yorker.
There is a certain reputation.
I'd be more apathetic if I weren't so lethargic.
And if you don't know otherwise, you might think a New Yorker cartoon is a little fancy for you.
Oh, I get it. That's kind of funny.
But don't be so sure, Allen says.
Yeah, these are all yeses.
While she won't reveal her favorites, she did agree to talk us through a couple winners. Like this one of a man and woman at dinner, captioned, "Let me interrupt your expertise with my confidence."
I mean, her expression, the fact that she has so little wine in her glass, has clearly been drinking steadily while he's
been talking.
Exactly. Yeah, that detail alone is just like, yep.
And this classic.
There's just layers of greatness to this.
On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog.
It opens up this variety of other questions, like what is this dog doing on the internet? It's sort of like the joke sets off the potential for all of these other funny thoughts.
That moment of yes for you, the editor, is it a laugh?
I will say I probably laugh out loud 4 times in the entire process of looking at 1,000 cartoons.
That's not a good ratio, I have to say.
Yeah, the thing that really will sell a cartoon is an element of surprise, because I'm in this dead-eye, infinite scroll mode. If something shocks me out of my stupor, then it's in, or at least it's gotten to the next stage where David Remnick has to also be surprised by it.
From there, some 60 finalists are whittled down to about 20.
Oh, the grand opening of the coconut shop.
Which the magazine purchases for future issues.
Okay, that's going in.
All right.
All right.
Do you think a discerning reader could notice a change in the last 5 years that you've been at the helm?
Someone asked me a much less deft and tactful version of that question right when I started, which is, oh, now that there's a woman in charge, are all the cartoons going to be different? And I was like, yes, they're all going to be about menstruation.
Of course.
But I mean, I think I was hired because of the imprint I could put on the magazine and the new voices I would find and promote, not despite it.
And about that, Mankoff acknowledged in a Washington Post article last year that many of the cartoonists he worked with were a diverse group when it came to height and weight, but that's about it.
As he said, it was a limited group of cartoonists and there wasn't a lot of diversity.
So you recruited people?
I started recruiting people and immediately people were sending me names of other people that they were excited about.
Ellie Black and Serin Lee are two of the cartoonists she's brought in.
Do you think there's any difference in her tenure?
I think there's definitely more different voices or different points of view.
I do know like how fortunate it feels to be able to like share your work with somebody who takes it seriously and listens to you.
Both do say they feel supported by Alan, who not only encouraged them to submit in the first place, but has provided expert feedback on cartoons like this one.
A knight is trying to get into the castle to get to the princess, and the dragon's like, go away, she doesn't want to see you. And I did not give the princess a nose, and Emma was like, this is great, but can you just draw a nose?
And did you think Emma, in retrospect, was right? The princess needed a nose?
Didn't hurt.
And by bringing in a new generation of New Yorker cartoonists, the hope is a new generation of readers will follow. Not only for the articles, but for the laughs.
Part of the joy of it is that you can run a New Yorker cartoon that is a very unsophisticated, dumb joke, and you can run a New Yorker cartoon that is alludes to a relatively obscure line of poetry. And both of those things can exist in the same place. And is every single person who reads The New Yorker going to like both of those? No. But I want there to be an accessible point for anyone who is coming to New Yorker cartoons and wants to have a laugh, see a bit of their life represented.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News. I'm Michelle Miller, and thank you for watching Eye on America.